Hey everybody, it's Amanda. Today we're going to be discussing variables inside of functions, aka arguments versus parameters, because I feel like I didn't do a great job at explaining it in my last video. However, the focus on that last video was arguments. With that being said, I'm going to continue with my last program just to explain the difference here. So this right here is going to be our prototype for our function with parameters. However, in order to use this function again, it's going to need arguments. So as I discussed in my previous video, here is my integer variable called user num1, and then I have integer user num2, which are two separate variables inside of this void function, which are declared locally inside of this function. And then I use them inside of my function call. As you notice, the variables that are used are no longer the same name as first number and second number. They're user num1 and user num2. This is because they're taking the number and it's using a separate variable, and it's storing that information inside of that variable, and then it's taking that variable and it's allowing this variable to go inside of this function. So user num1 is going to take place of first num, and then user num2 is going to take place of second num, and then they're going to multiply by each other, which is going to return one integer. So that's the difference between, this is what we would call an argument. If we come down here, this would be our argument 1, and then argument 2. And then if we come down here, looks like we do have a comment. So this would be our parameter 1 and parameter 2. So basically, the reason why that these are named differently, and you could use the same name, but the reason why generally they're named different names is because they're going to allow you to work with the function itself. So it's going to give you an indication, hey, this is an integer function. Its name is multiply two numbers. That means pretty simple. So it's going to multiply two numbers that are of the integer data type. So I have two integers that are going to be multiplied, and it's going to return one integer inside of my function. Now going to the arguments, the reason why they're called arguments is because, as you can see, so we have our function that has our parameters, which is first num and second num, which is two variables of the integer data types, and it returns an integer. And then we have our void function, which is ask user for numbers to multiply. It should probably be ask user for two numbers to multiply, but whatever. We'll go ahead and change it real fast. All right, so now that's done. Okay, so here we go. So ask user for two numbers to multiply, and as you can see, we come down, and again, we have our integer variable user num1 declared, and then it's going to ask the user for the num, and then it's it's going to use the stream extraction operator and extract it and store it inside of user num1, which is this integer data type, and then it's going to be stored in. That's all it's doing right now, is being stored until it comes down to this function call. And this function call, it's going to use the information, and it's going to, as you can see, we have multiply two numbers, which matches our function name. So our function call is going to be function name. And then our argument 1 is going to be our first variable that we decide to use, and align with how we want to use it with our program and our function and how we're using it. So our argument 1 is going to be user num1, and then our argument 2 in this case is going to be user num2, because those are going to be the two numbers that are going to be asked to be multiplied when we run the program itself. As you can see when we run the program right now, you've already seen it, but so what number do you want to multiply 4? We can do 33. The result is 132. So hopefully that helps explain a little bit what the difference between a parameter and an argument is. So basically a parameter is going to be the description of what's going to be used in the function itself and what variables you're going to be passing to that function in order for that function to work correctly, I should say. And then arguments are going to be the actual variables that are used inside of that function in order for that function to return whatever value or whatever it is you're trying to return. For example, we don't need that void function in order to run the multiply two numbers. I could just declare two numbers. So num1 and assign it 12, and then I'll do num2 and assign it 12. And then I'll do the multiply two numbers. And I'll use, these are what we would call arguments. And let's go ahead and actually display that so you can actually see the result. So again, just to hard code it in your head, we have our cout, stream insertion operator, string literal, stream insertion operator, function call with our two arguments. Doesn't matter if you have spaces or not. I don't really do spaces for some reason when it comes to function calls. And then our good old semicolon for our syntax. And if I did my function call, it would still work. However, it wouldn't display anything. So that's why I went ahead and did my cout statement. So I'm going ahead and run my program. And what number do you want to multiply? This is just the first void call that's going to be here. So I'll do 3 and 10. And then as you can see, the result is 144 when it multiplies 12 by 12. The reason why it's jumbled up right here is because I don't have an endl right here. Should have included that. Sorry. I'll go ahead and clear my screen now to make it a little bit more clear. So now I have my 3 and my 10 just to make it clear. So the result is 30. And then as you can see again, so I go through my void function, ask for the first number, ask for the second number. The result is 30. However, if I wanted to run the function again with two different arguments instead of the two other arguments that are being used locally inside of this function, then I could hard code them and do it this way, or I can add them to another function as well. Nothing is preventing me from doing that. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. Hopefully this helps you understand the difference between parameters and arguments. If you have any questions, please let me know. Again, thanks for your time.